Hello, my name is Micah. Welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about Seeking Sister Wives Season 4, Episode 3. And we start off with Taryn, India, and Marcus. And Taryn and India are setting up for Marcus's date with their new potential sister wife, Bina. Forgive me, I'm saying these people's names wrong. It's just I've heard them so many times. I had to say them so many times. They're starting to get confusing. I say them. So like I said, forgive me. Anyways, back to the episode. And India is not 100% on board to adding a third wife. Maybe too soon for me to say, but if I take a guess, it's probably because if the new wife comes in the picture, she'll no longer be presented as the prize, and the new wife will be in, she'll get pushed aside just like the other wife. Because that maybe it's too soon to say, but that's definitely what I'm picking up on. When they're done setting up for the date, they sit down and talk about how India is kind of scared about Marcus falling in love with someone else and how that's going to change their dynamic. They have such a strong dynamic, she doesn't want anybody to break that. Also makes her cringe a little bit to see Marcus go on another date with another woman. She has the audacity to ask Taryn, what was it like for you to see Marcus falling in love with me? The reason why I say she has the audacity because you and Marcus fell in love because Marcus was cheating, not because y'all mutually all agreed to a polygamous relationship. Maybe after that, but during and in the very beginning, that was just blatant out cheating. So how do you think she felt? Especially being that she didn't even want you there to begin with in the very beginning. Maybe now because y'all have moved on, y'all have grown, but if we're speaking in past tense, then no, she did not feel good about it at all. But sorry, that was a bit of a rant. But Taryn ends up saying, yes, it was hard. And it was even harder at times when they would take the kids out and she felt, those were her kids. Why would I let them form a bond with another woman other than me, their mother? At least that's what I got from it. I said earlier, she didn't even want India in the picture in the beginning, but she eventually came to terms with it. Especially since Marcus was having a rough time in his life because his grandmother had passed away who was like a mother to him. India was able to offer emotional support for him. I'm going to an in-person confession with India. She talks about how she's very territorial and she doesn't think she's going to enjoy watching Marcus build another foundation with another woman. She just wants all of his love just for them. And I feel like that takes away the whole point from a polygamous relationship. Maybe I'm wrong, but isn't that the whole point is to share and to spread the love around, or is it not? But next move on to Danielle and Garrett, and he is still on the phone with Roberta and he's very emotional and crying. I like to talk about in the last episode, and I honestly found it kind of funny when Garrett started crying. I don't think it's funny when men cry. I feel like men just show their emotions, and that is 100% okay, and they have every right to do so. But with Garrett, I just thought it was funny. Maybe I shouldn't find that funny, but it just was to me. Once he's done talking on the phone to Roberta, Leah comes and checks up on him and makes sure he's okay. Then they go and cut some bell peppers and onions to grill with the chicken and some other food. And Leah talks about how she doesn't want to build bad blood with Roberta, especially since Roberta's an emotional roller coaster and Leah tends to shut down when it comes to conflict. So she's gonna have a little bit more patience with Roberta, especially since she says that her and Garrett have a lot of chemistry. I definitely see the relationship going far since he's very respectful towards her. And I don't mean to be disrespectful towards Leah or anything, but what chemistry? Because all I'm seeing is like a friendship type of thing, not even that, more like a stranger type. Maybe that's just me, but I'm not getting the vibe that he's really interested in Leah at all. Going back to the scene, Leah goes sit down while Garrett grills the chicken. She starts talking to Danielle about boundaries and asking Danielle like, what are your boundaries? What are yes, what's a no? And Danielle says no sex, because that makes two people a union. And Leah doesn't know how to feel about that, and because she feels like it's stopping their relationship from growing with Garrett, she sees Danielle as a bit as possessive and territorial. I think a lot of these women are, because they really don't want these polygamous relationships. At the end of the day, they're doing it because it makes their husband happy, not because they truly have an interest in it. I do understand that marriage and all that jazz and relationships is about sacrifices, but at what line do the sacrifices end, I guess you could say, or like what are the boundaries with the sacrifices? I guess that's what I'm saying. Especially with something like this, because at some point when you don't even want to do it to begin with, you're gonna become unhappy with your life. Anyways, my point was, I just don't think Danielle truly wants to do this, and she's just doing it to keep Garrett around. But Anyways, they say Leah is a very bold person and that may cause conflict, and that's a bit of a red flag for Garrett. I don't really see Leah as a bold person, at least in my opinion. I just think she's a person who's open to communication, and she's just not gonna sweep stuff under the rug, especially knowing herself very well. So she knows what she wants, she knows what she doesn't want, and like I said, open to communication. So I don't see that as a bold person. Maybe open-minded, but not bold. Next, we move on to Sidion and Tasha from Portland, Oregon. Tasha's 29, Sidion is 38, and they were the last seasons of Seeking Sister Wives. But they did not find a match for them, and they had dated multiple people, and nothing was right. The reason why they started dating new people is because the first wife decided that she no longer wanted a polygamous relationship. It just outgrew it, and it wasn't for her anymore. Both Sidion and Tasha really liked the dynamic of a polygamous relationship, so they started to date, and like I said, they just couldn't find anything. Sidion has 3 kids: Ellie, who is 8, Liam, who is 14, and Tyron, who is 10, I think how you pronounce it. And Liam used to be Lily last year, but he now prefers to go by he and pronouns, and the potential new sister will have to be respectful towards that and be respectful towards their kids and accept their kids for who they are, which I think that's really great, because I know there's plenty of parents who will hear that and completely tear down their kids and abandon them. So this is nice to see. And that's the reason why they moved to Portland, Oregon, because they're originally from Idaho. But since Idaho is so conservative and the tension between LGBTQ plus is high, they decided to move to a more open-minded area. Overall, just a more safer environment for the kids. On top of that, polygamy is much more accepted in Oregon than it would have been in Idaho. Like I talked about earlier, they had tried out a couple of different relationships last season, but none of them worked out. But fast forward to today's time, they are talking to a woman named Ariela, who is from the Philippines and lives in the Philippines. And Tasha and Sidion know her from a work trip that Tasha went on, and she had talked about polygamy, and Ariela was open to the idea, so they started their communication from there romantically. Now they're in a long distance relationship, and they've tried meeting up twice, but it has always just fell through. Decided to FaceTime her so they can talk and catch up, and the connection is pretty spotty, so either they're freezing up or she's freezing up or it's lagging, so there's something always going on with the internet connection. They really don't talk for long, but Ariela's birthday did come up in the conversation. And our family is very excited. Said earlier they want to meet up, but Sidion and Tasha are very worried that Ariela is going to get very discouraged by it, since it's just too much trouble trying to meet each other and see if they have a real connection. And that's not even talking about the visa and all of that. I'm not sure how any of that works. Are they going to pull like a Danielle and Garrett move, get divorced so Ariela and Sidion can get the fiance visa so she could come over? I don't really know. Next, move on to the Davison family. The morning after Nick and Danielle had sex, I really don't want to talk about it, so long story short, they end up having sex, and then after they had sex, Jennifer and April just crawled back into bed with them. Nearly screamed when I heard that, because I don't know if I can even talk about that, but that's just gross to crawl back into bed with other people right after they had sex. You know what, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because oh my gosh, it's just gross in my opinion. About what I was saying, they just crawled back into bed and it was just like a normal, even though I cannot wrap my head around that. But if it makes them happy, oh well. And Nick and Danielle slept in together, and Jennifer and April just went off to work like any normal day. Nick and Danielle are sitting in the kitchen drinking juice, talking about how to touch bases with April and Jennifer and just make sure they're okay with everything. Because if one person doesn't get along with another person, it can mess up the whole dynamic and cause tension in the relationships. Nick just wanted to make sure that Danielle is really on board and it's just not a phase for her. People will think they want a polygamous relationship, but once they realize what it actually is, they really don't want it. And I guess they've been through that multiple times. They just want to make sure Danielle is committed and knows what she's getting herself into, I guess. Next, we move on to Danielle and Garrett, and they're finally done cooking all the food, and they sit down on the table and start eating. And they started talking about the family dynamic, and Leah talks about how she works 12 hours a day and she usually eats on the way home. and Leah doesn't feel like she should have to do laundry or a whole bunch of chores when she gets home, and that's really concerning for Danielle and Garrett. And Gary recommends working 30 hours a week, and that looks like a no-go for Leah. She kind of frowned her face up to the idea of it. Talk about the mindset when it comes to chores and all that stuff, and how it's a group effort, and whenever it needs to get done, someone just needs to do it. Not necessarily needs to be like a set schedule type of thing, especially in a polygamous relationship. I can understand both perspectives, but since Garrett says he has a successful building company, I believe what it is, since he's building his own house with his own company and all that stuff, Leah could work less hours, so she could make that compromise. But I could also understand her not wanting to work less hours and still wanting to achieve what she wants to achieve career-wise. I think it's really just going to take compromise. I think Leah cutting back on some hours would help. Maybe not to 30 hours, because I think most people work like a good 40 hours a week, at least from my experience. So maybe like she could work 40 hours a week instead of working the 12 hours every single day, and they can get like some type of schedule when it comes to chores. That way everyone gets what they want. Last, we move on to Marcus, Tyron, and India. Marcus is getting ready to go on his date with their new potential sister wife, Bina, who is from North Carolina, which Tyron and Marcus know her from when they used to live in North Carolina, and they've known each other for about 12 or 13 years. And they're very close, but Bina and India do not know each other, so this will be the first time that they have heard of each other. Bina owns her own hair salon business, so she has a lot going on in her life. And when Marcus and Bina are on the date, Bina's asking a lot of questions about polygamy and just how the whole dynamic is gonna work. Bina wants to have a polygamous relationship because she feels like monogamous relationships don't work because someone's always gonna step out and cheat. Rather it be a mutual agreement than a behind each other's back type of thing. I feel like that has more to do with the individual than monogamous relationships in general, but we're just gonna go with it. She's also a very independent person, and that may cause an issue for Marcus because I think he just likes being controlled because he likes controlling other people. Right now it's looking hopeful and looks like the relationship is gonna work out. It was like really cute at rose quartz and all that stuff, so it was really pretty. But then Marcus comes home from his date, and he comes home to Tyron and India wondering how the date went. He tells them the date went really well, even to the point where Bina's coming over tomorrow evening. We can spend more time together since Bina lives in North Carolina, and India was very shocked by that, as that means sex comes next, and she isn't ready for that, and she wants to be notified when it happens or when it's about to happen. And Tyron, on the other hand, just wants to let it happen organically rather than controlling the whole situation, dictating when it happens, when it doesn't happen. Tyron says India has the attitude like, yeah, I want you to go on a date, but don't go on a date. I want you to get to know each other, but don't get to know each other. Like, she's asking for one thing, but saying a completely different thing when it comes down to it at the end of the day. Byron and India have a disagreement about the whole sex thing. India says when she gets introduced to the kids and the kids start to get involved, that's when y'all can start to have sex. It's like that doesn't make any sense, because when you have your children involved in something, it takes things to a different completely level. And then if they decide they don't want to continue the relationship any further, the kids are involved, and now like the kids are kind of in their sex life, and it's kind of weird. I feel like India's only saying that to stop them from having sex because, like I said, she does not want a third wife unless she can be the trophy, and if she can't be the trophy, then she doesn't want another wife. I wish she would just be more honest with herself about how she really feels about the whole situation. Yeah, that was the episode. I gave an 8 out of 10. It's supposed to